I got back from Lubbock a day earlier than planned. Project wrapped ahead of schedule, which is rare in my line of work. We'd hit our milestone, did the usual handshakes and high fives, then I caught an early evening flight. The whole ride home, I pictured Ellie's face when I walked through the door. Thought maybe I'd pick up Ty from that spot on Lamar she likes. Be the husband who surprises his wife, not just the guy who clocks in and out of his own marriage between job sites. The house was quiet when I pulled into the driveway. No lights on downstairs, which struck me as odd. Ellie was usually glued to her late-night baking shows by now, or scrolling her phone with a throw blanket pulled up to her chin. But it was dark. Not suspicious, exactly. Just not right. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. First thing I noticed was the air. It smelled like lilacs, Ellie's usual laundry scent, but layered under that was something else. Something artificial and heavy, like expensive department store perfume sprayed 5 seconds before someone ran out the door. "Ellie," I called, setting my suitcase down in the hallway. No answer at first, but then I heard movement upstairs. Fast. Not the casual thud of socks on wood floors either, more like a scramble. I climbed the stairs slowly, listening. When I turned the corner into our bedroom, that's when I saw it. A gray hoodie draped across the corner of the accent chair. Simple. Stylish. Definitely not mine. I stopped. Now, I've never been the suspicious type. Ellie and I have been married for 11 years. We met at a neighborhood charity build back when I was still supervising residential jobs and she worked for an architecture firm. She was magnetic. Funny. The kind of woman who made you feel seen. We'd had our share of ups and downs like anyone else, but I'd never had a reason to doubt her. Until now. I stared at that hoodie like it was a puzzle piece dropped in the wrong box. I picked it up. Men's medium. Slightly worn but expensive. Some boutique label I didn't recognize. Smelled like cologne, not mine, not even close. Something musky with a citrusy bite. Then Ellie appeared in the doorway. Her hair was damp. She wore a towel wrapped tight across her chest, the edges tucked with surgical precision. Her skin glistened, and she blinked like someone who hadn't expected to be seen yet. "You're home early," she said, like she needed to remind herself it was okay to be surprised. "Got done early. Figured I'd surprise you." I held up the hoodie between us. "This yours?" Her eyes flicked to it just for a second. Then she laughed. It was the kind of laugh that sounds like an answer before it's a reaction. "Oh, that's probably from when I was at Linda's last week," she said, already stepping forward to grab it. "Her brother left it in her car or something. I borrowed it for the ride home and forgot to give it back." "Didn't know Linda had a brother," I said. My voice came out more even than I expected. "Oh, well, he was just in town for a few days. You know how she is. Always inviting people over." She shoved the hoodie into the laundry hamper like it offended her. Then she walked toward the bathroom. "I'm gonna rinse off real quick. I didn't know you were coming back tonight." She closed the door without waiting for a reply. I stood there, staring at the closed bathroom door, my mind cycling through possibilities I didn't want to entertain. That hoodie didn't belong to Linda's brother. Hell, I didn't even know if Linda had a brother. And the way she said it, it was too smooth, like she'd thought through that line already, maybe even practiced it. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The comforter was freshly made. Too freshly. Tucked in like a hotel room. Ellie's never been that precise with our bed unless company's over, or something needs covering up. The scent in the room hit me again. Strong. Like someone had tried to drown out something less pleasant. Sweat, maybe. Or someone else's cologne. My hands were still on my knees, but I could feel the tension all the way up my arms. I wasn't angry yet. Just alert. Like the part of my brain that gets triggered when a beam doesn't line up with a column. When you know something's off in the structure, even if you can't see the crack. I listened to the water running in the shower and tried to breathe normally. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired and overthinking. But the hoodie wasn't mine. The smell wasn't Ellie's. And the explanation about Linda's phantom brother felt too rehearsed to trust. I didn't say anything when she came out. I watched her dry her hair, watched her slip into one of her oversized t-shirts and pretend nothing had happened. She climbed into bed like it was any other night. Gave me a kiss that didn't land quite right. "Glad you're home," she said, curling away from me. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, that same scent still lingering in the air. And in that silence, something shifted. A thought I'd never let myself consider before crept in, and it didn't leave. What if I didn't know her as well as I thought? After the hoodie incident, something inside me wouldn't shut off. Like a smoke detector with just enough battery to chirp every few minutes, too soft to demand immediate action, too persistent to ignore. I didn't confront Ellie. Not directly. I'm not the type to charge in without blueprints. But I started watching, listening, taking notes, not on paper, but in my head. Because once you spot one crack in the drywall, you start wondering how deep the damage goes. And it didn't take long to find more. First, it was the selfies. Ellie hadn't been active on social media in over a year. She used to be a little obsessive with it, boomerangs of mimosas, gym selfies with motivational captions, latte art photos, but somewhere along the way, she cooled off. Claimed it was too toxic and that she'd rather live in the moment. But 2 weeks after I got home, she was back at it. Stories, reels, likes from people I didn't recognize. At first, I chalked it up to boredom. But then I noticed something else, no wedding ring. Not in a single post. I scrolled through her grid one night while she was in the shower. A few new full-body sh*ts. Flattering angles. The captions were vague, open-ended. "Learning to love myself again," one said. Another just said reset. Comments from men I didn't know, heart emojis and compliments like they were lining up. And she didn't just post them, she engaged. Flirty responses. Little laughing emojis. Playing coy. I mentioned it once gently. Said, "You stopped wearing your ring?" with a half smile like I wasn't actually concerned. She laughed, brushing it off. "Oh, I take it off when I'm lifting weights. My fingers swell. You want me to have a Hulk knuckle?" I smiled back, but the laugh didn't reach my chest. Weightlifting, huh? That was new too. Ellie had never been a gym rat. She dabbled, sure, spun on a Peloton for 2 months back in 2021, but lately she was obsessed. Morning runs, evening classes, a new personal trainer she never mentioned by name. She started drinking protein shakes and logging her macros. Once I offered to join her. She declined. "Linda and I have our own routine," she said. "We keep each other on track." Ah yes, Linda again. The ever-elusive friend I still hadn't met. She came up constantly, texting, brunching, gym dates, girl therapy nights. And every time I asked why we hadn't crossed paths, Ellie had a reason. She just broke up with a guy. She's not really in the mood to socialize. She's got weird hours. Works nights. She's kinda shy. Doesn't love meeting new people. At one point, I even said, "I'm starting to think Linda's imaginary." Ellie smiled, but her eyes narrowed. "Wow. Okay, that's rude." So I let it go. On the surface, anyway. But in the back of my mind, I started testing things. Looking for edges where the story frayed. One Thursday, I got off work early. No notice. Just pulled up to the house around 2 p.m. hoping maybe I'd surprise her. Her car wasn't in the driveway. I texted her, no reply. Half an hour later, she came in through the front door looking completely put together. Hair curled. Makeup perfect. Dressed like she was heading to dinner, not returning from it. "Hey babe," she said, slipping off her heels. "Didn't know you'd be home." I smiled. "Wrapped up early." "Oh. I was just out with Linda." Lunch turned into a Target run. She held up a single shopping bag, one decorative candle. "Didn't drive?" I asked, noticing her car was still parked halfway down the block. "They're doing work on our side of the street," she said. Blocked me in, so I parked around the corner. Later that evening, I walked up the street and checked for any signs of construction. Not a cone. Not a sign. Not a single work truck in sight. The next few days, I started clocking where her car was parked. Sometimes 2 blocks down. Sometimes even farther. Always around the same time of day, mid-afternoon into the evening. Never in our driveway. One night, I asked about it again just to see if her story stayed consistent. She frowned. "You're keeping tabs on my parking spots now?" "No," I said. "Just noticed it's never out front anymore." She shrugged. "We live in Austin. Parking ****CKs. I didn't realize it needed a timestamp." The words landed sharp like a deflection designed to wound. I didn't argue. I just nodded and kept my mouth shut. But inside, the pieces were shifting. Other little things started standing out. Her hair smelled different some nights. Not bad, just not like her usual products. Once she came home in fresh makeup after telling me she was going to run errands. When I asked if she'd had time to eat, she said no, but her lipstick was reapplied and perfect. Like she'd been somewhere worth looking good for. She kept saying she and Linda were hitting up new restaurants, trying sushi spots and wine bars. But when I offered to tag along once, I'll even be the designated driver, she waved it off. It's girl time, she said. You'd hate it. Just estrogen and venting. Another night she came home in heels I hadn't seen before. Said she just dug them out of the closet. The soles looked new. Price sticker still half attached. I didn't press. I was starting to understand the rhythm of these lies. She'd always deflect, then pivot. Build a small wall, then throw a flower pot over it so it felt like nothing serious. And that perfume? It kept showing up. Once in the laundry room where her workout clothes were piled. Again in the back seat of her car when I borrowed it for a supply run, so strong I had to roll the windows down. She didn't wear that scent around me. Never had. So why did it haunt the corners of our home? Still, I hadn't caught her in anything definitive. No photos. No names. Just patterns. Inconsistencies. And that gnawing sense of wrongness that followed me around like a shadow. I started staying up later. Sitting on the couch, half watching TV while she went to bed early, claiming she was exhausted from her workout. Sometimes I'd hear her phone vibrate at night. I'd glance toward the bedroom and it'd be silent again. Once I walked in and she was holding its screen down. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, she said, almost too fast. Just Linda. Drama. That name again. At work, I started missing things. Forgot a materials order, showed up late to a planning meeting. My crew noticed. One of the guys, junior, mid-20s, sharp kid, asked me straight up, "You good, boss?" I lied. Said I was just tired. In truth, I was unraveling. Slowly. Quietly. Like a beam bowing under too much weight, invisible until it snaps. Still, I told myself maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was stress. Maybe she really was reconnecting with her old self, getting fit, socializing, reclaiming her confidence. Maybe this was just growing pains. A shift in routine. A phase. But then the company dinner happened. And all the maybes fell apart. The night it all unraveled was supposed to be a celebration. We had just hit a major project milestone on the East Travis build, a record turnaround that cut 6 weeks off our timeline. My firm was throwing a big dinner at the Belmont downtown. Suits, speeches, open bar. Even the guys in steel-toed boots showed up in jackets. For once, we weren't covered in dust and stress. I hadn't planned to invite Ellie. Not at first. But a few days prior, she asked what I was doing Friday night, and I figured, why not? I still wanted to believe we were okay. That the weirdness in our marriage could be fixed with a little time, some shared space, something as simple as a night out. Maybe if we dressed up and sat across from each other at a table again, I'd see that woman I used to know, the one who used to tuck her feet into my lap while we watched reruns and debated movie endings. So I told her she should come. Open bar, I said. Free food. Endless small talk. She hesitated, then said she'd think about it. Then 2 days before the dinner, she told me she'd come after all. I'll meet you there, she said. I've got an appointment right before, but I'll head straight over. That night, I showed up solo and found my coworkers clustered near the bar. I grabbed a drink, made rounds, shook hands with some of the newer guys. Everyone was in good spirits. Then, just after the welcome toast, I saw her walk in. Ellie. Wearing a dress I'd never seen before, emerald green, sleeveless, hugging every line of her body. Her hair was curled and pinned in that half-up way she only did for weddings. Her heels clicked against the polished concrete floor like she owned the room. But it wasn't just her. She wasn't alone. Next to her was a man. Tall. Fit. Mid-30s, maybe early 40s. Tan skin. Confident gait. Clean-shaven. Dressed in one of those fitted blazers that guys who don't sweat for a living always seem to wear effortlessly. They looked familiar. Comfortable. Close. His hand was at the small of her back when they walked in. Not possessive. Just practiced. My stomach turned. Ellie spotted me before I could step away. She waved and motioned the man forward. Bran, she called brightly like we were in some sitcom reunion. This is Theo. Theo. I shook his hand. Firm grip. Cold eyes. Brandon, I said. He smirked. Nice to finally meet the guy who builds half of Austin. Ellie laughed too quickly. Brandon's a construction engineer, she added. He's been working nonstop on this insane project, right, babe? Theo nodded like he already knew. We stood there awkwardly for a few moments, then she said she was going to grab a drink. Theo followed. I watched them walk toward the bar together, two magnets. The way they leaned in, the timing of their smiles. My wife touched his arm when she laughed. He brushed her lower back again. And I knew. No more maybes. No more doubts. Every weird moment, every lie, every unexplained change in her habits, this was it. This was the center of the maze I'd been trapped in for months. They took their time at the bar. I watched Theo whisper something, and Ellie threw her head back and laughed like she hadn't in years. Not with me. Not recently. She hadn't just changed. She transferred her energy, her affection, her attention to someone else. Later, during dinner, they sat 2 seats away from me. I ended up across from HR and next to 2 interns from design, trying to smile through the burn behind my eyes. Ellie and Theo chatted all night like they belonged there, like this was their event, not mine. At one point, someone toasted the crew and joked, "Brandon here's probably the only guy who could keep a marriage and a foundation level at the same time." People chuckled. Theo leaned in and said, with just enough volume to carry, "Well, one of those jobs is easier than the other." Ellie laughed. Open. Loud. Unapologetic. The table got quiet. A couple of folks glanced at me, unsure if it had landed as a joke or an insult. I didn't react. Not outwardly. I just took a sip of my drink, chewed a piece of dry chicken, and stared at the tiny ripple in my wine glass. But something in me went cold. Not furious. Not even hurt. Just finished. I didn't speak to Ellie again that night. She left with Theo after dessert, saying she had an early morning. I told her I'd stay and help clean up. She kissed my cheek like we were acquaintances and whispered, "Proud of you, babe." As soon as she walked out, I turned off. I nodded through the rest of the toasts, gave a quick speech about teamwork, then excused myself. I didn't even finish my drink. When I got home, her car wasn't in the driveway. I didn't wait up. Instead, I walked into our bedroom, took down every framed photo of us. The wedding *T by the lake, the New Orleans trip, the one from our old house's porch. All of them, off the walls, off the dresser, off the hallway shelves. Gone. I plugged in the digital photo frame on her nightstand. Nothing. She'd wiped it. The screen blinked white. No images available. By the time I walked back downstairs, her suitcase was packed and sitting by the front door. I didn't put it there. She had. Sometime earlier, maybe before the dinner, maybe days ago. Like she was waiting for a cue. I stood there for a long time staring at it. One of those sleek weekend rollers she only used for short trips, like the kind you'd take for a night away that you don't want your spouse asking too many questions about. The house was quiet. The hoodie was long gone. So was any sense of mystery. What replaced it was clarity. Heavy. Final. The kind of truth that doesn't need to be shouted because it's already settled in your bones. When Ellie came back the next morning, I was already awake. Had been for hours. Didn't sleep much. Didn't need to. You'd think a night like that, the confirmation of everything I'd been dreading, would keep a man tossing and turning. But there was no chaos in my mind anymore. No frantic thought loops, no knots in my gut. Just stillness. The kind that settles in when you finally stop trying to make excuses for someone else's choices. She opened the front door like she still lived here. No key needed. No hesitation. Still wearing the same heels from the night before, her dress hidden under a large zip hoodie, hair tied in a rushed bun. She paused when she saw the living room. The changes weren't dramatic, but they were deliberate. No throw pillows on the couch. No blanket she liked. No framed photos on the console. Even the book she had been reading for 6 months, still dog-eared on page 14, was missing from the coffee table. I stood in the kitchen, sipping black coffee. She looked at me, then around the room again. "Did you clean?" she asked cautiously. I took a sip. Tidied up. She didn't respond. Just stood there holding her keys like she hadn't figured out what to do next. I didn't offer a chair. Didn't ask how her night had gone. Didn't ask why she came back. Because I didn't care. I think that was the most surprising part, how quickly the switch flipped. How cleanly it all detached. It wasn't anger that had taken its place, or even sadness. It was quiet. Like the moment right after a wreck when the dust's still in the air and your ears ring but your body already knows what's broken. "I just came back to get a few things," she finally said. I nodded. "They're in the guest room." She flinched. I'd boxed up everything. Clothes. Skincare. Jewelry. Every item that was hers alone. Not out of spite, not as some dramatic gesture, but because I didn't want to see any trace of her scattered through the house anymore. She walked down the hall without a word. I listened to the soft clicks of her heels on the floorboards, the sound of the guest room door creaking open, then silence. I stayed in the kitchen. Didn't hover. Didn't follow. Just stood by the window, sipping my coffee while the morning sun lit up a lawn I suddenly felt the urge to mow. 20 minutes passed before she reappeared, dragging her suitcase behind her. She had changed into jeans and a hoodie, her dress folded under her arm. She looked different. Smaller. I didn't say anything. Just moved to the entryway and unlocked the deadbolt. She stopped near the door, her eyes scanning the house one last time. You already made up your mind, huh? She said, her voice hollow. I made it up months ago, I replied. I just didn't realize it. She looked down like she was trying to collect a defense, something to push back with, but it never came. I held the door open. She walked through it. No goodbye. No apology. No scene. Just a soft-wheeled suitcase clicking over the front porch step and then fading down the sidewalk. I closed the door behind her and turned the deadbolt again, not because I feared she'd return, but because I finally understood what it meant to protect your peace. That weekend I gutted the house of her. Her perfume bottles in the bathroom gone. That absurdly large collection of hair ties and bobby pins she never picked up tossed. Her yoga mat, her Instagrammable spice rack, the live laugh love pillow she claimed was ironic but never actually removed from the bed, boxed and set in the garage for pickup. I changed the locks the next day. Called the bank and removed her from the joint accounts. Froze the shared credit card. Updated my emergency contacts, took her name off the car insurance, and refiled the house deed under mine alone. The photo frame in our bedroom never came back on. The walls didn't feel empty, they felt restored. Like they'd been waiting for the static to clear. For the first time in a long while, I heard silence in my house and didn't hate it. Ellie texted me a few days later. Can we talk? I didn't respond. She called twice. I declined both. Then silence for another week. Then came the email. Long rambling. Dressed in guilt, dipped in nostalgia. She said she missed me. That she didn't realize what she had. That things got confusing. That Theo wasn't what she thought. That it was never serious. That it was over. I never stopped loving you, she wrote. I read the entire message without blinking. Then deleted it. There was nothing in those words that hadn't already been reduced to dust. Nothing she could say that would unlaugh that night at the Belmont. That would unwear the perfume I never bought. That would make the hoodie fit me. She had her chance. And she chose something else. Or maybe she didn't choose it all, maybe she just let it happen, the way a crack becomes a split, the way excuses become routine. Either way, I was done. I didn't send a revenge message. Didn't post a cryptic quote online. Didn't block her number or badmouth her to mutual friends. I wasn't interested in the performance of closure. I was interested in the reality of it. One morning, I stood in my bedroom, looked at the mirror, and didn't feel bitterness. Just a kind of raw neutrality. Like waking up from a long, strange dream where nothing made sense until it did. Ellie had become a ghost. Not the haunting kind. The kind you stop believing in the moment you realize you're still alive. I used to think endings were clean. You make your decision, you close the door, and that's it. Closure served cold, wrapped in silence. But I learned something in the weeks after Ellie left. Endings are never clean. Not when there's history. Not when someone doesn't want to let go. It started small. A text here. A call there. Harmless at first glance, the kind of messages you could almost mistake for kindness if you weren't paying attention. Hey, hope you're eating okay. I know you forget to cook when you're stressed. I saw your old leather jacket in the hall closet. Can I come by and grab it? Each one framed with soft edges. No apologies. No real questions. Just probes. Feeling for an opening. A weak spot. I didn't respond. Then came the shift. The edge. I don't understand how you can just shut me out like this. Don't you owe me one honest conversation? No, Ellie. What I owed you, I already gave. Years of trust, support, patience. What I don't owe you is a platform to rewrite what happened. The calls picked up after that. Mostly late. I'd see her name light up my phone while I was in bed. She never left voicemails, just the empty buzz of a missed call over and over, like she was counting on curiosity to pull me back in. Then one evening, it wasn't her name that flashed on my screen, it was our daughter's. Maya. 17. Senior year. My kid through and through, quiet thinker, sharp tongue, sharp mind. We shared the same exact frown when something didn't sit right. The same way of pausing before speaking. She rarely called. Usually just texts. So when my phone lit up with her number, I answered before the second ring. Hey, everything okay? Silence for a beat. Then a sigh. Can you tell Mom to stop making me the middleman? I blinked. What do you mean? She keeps asking me to talk to you. Tells me to ask if you'll just meet her halfway. Says I should help bridge the gap, since she's my mother. There was no heat in her voice. Just tiredness. The kind of exhaustion that only comes when you realize one parent is using you like a pawn. I'm sorry she put you in that position, I said. That's not your job, Maya. You don't need to carry any of this. She was quiet again. Then she said, did she really cheat on you? There it was. I wanted to lie, to spare her, But Maya's too smart for that. She already knew. She made choices, I said carefully. Ones that don't line up with what we promised each other. And I can't live in a house where I'm lied to. She didn't say anything for a moment. I thought maybe the call had dropped. Then she said, "Okay, I get it." And in her voice, I heard it, her allegiance shifting, her clarity sharpening. That call was the first real fracture between Ellie and Maya. I hadn't asked for it, hadn't wanted it. But Ellie's need for control had started to cost her more than just a marriage. A few days later, Ellie emailed again. This one was longer. Subject: "Please read this." The message opened like a confession, shifted to accusation, then twisted into a plea. She talked about how disconnected she'd felt, how I had stopped noticing her, how she'd lost herself in the routines of our life, how Theo wasn't what it looked like, how she didn't mean to hurt me, how betrayal, in her words, had felt like the only way to feel alive again, the only way to feel alive. That phrase sat in my chest like a rock. I didn't reply. Instead, I reread a line she'd buried at the end of the message. "You weren't always the victim, Brandon. You shut me out long before I did anything wrong." There it was, the core of every manipulator's playbook. Shift the blame, equalize the wrongdoing, paint pain as reaction, not choice. But I'd lived that marriage. I knew what I gave, knew what I sacrificed, and I knew what I didn't do. Lie, cheat, or pretend someone else's arms could solve a problem we never discussed. She didn't like silence. When her email got no response, the next knock came in the form of a delivery. A manila envelope left at my doorstep. Inside, printed photos. Vacations. Maya's dance recital. Our 10th anniversary trip to Colorado. And a handwritten letter. Blue ink. Her script, still the same elegant tilt it always had. "I've been looking through everything," she wrote. "I miss the life we had. I miss you. Please don't erase me." I folded the letter back up and placed it in a drawer I'd already emptied once before. 2 days later, she showed up. No warning. Just the sound of a car door and her footsteps on the porch. I saw her through the peephole. Jeans. Faded sweater. No makeup. Hair down. She stood holding a Tupperware container, casserole, probably. Her idea of peace offerings. I didn't open the door. She stood there for 5 minutes. Knocked twice. Then left the container on the step and walked away. I dumped it straight into the trash. That night I got another message. "I don't deserve to be erased like this. You loved me once. That has to count for something." It did. It counted for the version of me that used to need her. The version that bent to make sure she never felt neglected. The man who didn't see the signs until he tripped over the wreckage. But that version of me was gone. What remained was someone quieter. Not colder. Just done. A week passed. Then came the final card she had to play. She called Maya again. This time she pushed harder. Maya told me about it later. Said Ellie tried to make her choose. Asked her to come stay for a while at the new condo she'd moved into. She said you were poisoning me against her. Maya told me. I didn't even feel anger. Just sadness. Ellie still writing the narrative like she was the one left behind. Still telling herself this was a misunderstanding, not a consequence. Maya didn't go. She didn't even respond. A day later, she blocked Ellie's number. "I'll unblock her eventually," she said to me. "But not until she stops pretending this is something I'm supposed to fix." That night I sat in the backyard alone. It was cold. Late March chill settling into the grass. I watched the wind move through the trees and thought about how strange it was. That after everything, what hurt the most wasn't the affair. It was the erosion of truth. Ellie didn't just lie to me. She lied to herself. About what we were. About what she broke. About why it happened. And now she was trying to rewrite the ending. Trying to wedge her way back into a story that had already moved on. But I wasn't a character in her version anymore. I was the author of my own,